Call to order the regular meeting of the school board for Monday, August 26th. Our first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Just a reminder, the flags are in the southeast corner of the room. If you're following along with our agenda, we will skip item 1A. That leads us to 1B, reading of the school board meeting norms. Jeff.
Thank you. Number 1, be prepared. Number 2, be on time. Number 3, value and respect each other. Number 4, exercise thoughtful deliberation and conversation. 5, be professional at the board table and when visiting with the general public. Number 6, speak up when the norms are not being followed. And number 7, advocate on behalf of students and keep the community in mind.
Thank you. Item 2, approval of the agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve our agenda for this evening. Moved by Joel.
Second.
A second by Amber. We'll take a roll call vote.
Palmasino?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Lunn?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. Item 3, public comments. I did not get any blue forms turned in. Do we have any individuals wishing to make a public comment? Okay. Moving on then to item 4. These are superintendent's recommendations for discussion. 4A, update on consolidated grant application for 2024-2025 federal title funding. Mr. Matt Bakke.
Thank you, Board President Berger, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to update you on our consolidated grant application for the 24-25 school year. This incorporates our federal title funding as previously presented in July. And so this is simply an update in comparison to the funding that you previously I shared information on, like I said, back in July, as far as where our funding was. Primarily, I'm going to outline Title I and Title II funding, which did slightly go down. Title I funding went down $49,000 in comparison to the previous preliminary numbers, and then Title II actually took a bigger dip in $89,000 in comparison to the preliminary numbers. We also did receive our Title III dollars, which previously, if you recall, was to be determined. And we did see an increase of almost $9,000 there as a result of the increase of multilingual families into our area. And then our preliminary numbers in comparison to, or our final numbers in comparison to our preliminary numbers, actually stayed the same in Title IV. But again, that is an increase from last year of $71,000. And so our numbers did change quite drastically when you compare it to last year to this year. Overall, when we look at the totality of it, it's a total decrease of $101,000 when you take all of the titles and compare them across the board. So I will stand for any questions if you may have them.
Any questions on this item? Yes, Dr. Lunn.
Do we have any answers as to why it went down?
Yeah, thank you, Board Member Lunn, members of the board. It would reflect our census population numbers in comparison to our estimate amounts to now our final amounts. And so when we look at that, when we look at our census poverty numbers, originally the estimated amount was 1,031, and then our final numbers actually came in at 956. And so that slight dip resulted in our decrease in comparison to the rest of the state. You're welcome.
Do you know what kind of advocacy is done? Like, I don't want to call it a negotiation, but like, you know, when we're trying to identify and work around census numbers, but also we recognize the need for these title funds that would benefit our students. Is there local advocacy going on, like the state works with the federal government, or how does that work?
Board Member Flynn, members of the board, thank you very much. So to reflect that question, there are some advocacy that happens at the local level. We continue to push the free and reduced lunch numbers, the free and reduced lunch applications. We did actually toy with the idea of trying to implement that into the registration process in the spring. However, the new application doesn't come until July 1, and so ideally, we'd like to include that in the spring registration when a majority of our families actually register. However, that new application is not available to us until the July 1 date, and sometimes even later than that. And so it really becomes difficult to try and make sure we're getting those out there as soon as we possibly can. And typically when that comes out in July, then we really have to kind of hit the pavement in August and really make sure that that gets out there. Now, as far as the legislature and congressionally, we continue to work with our state to advocate for dollars across the board. I know our state DPI is very active in that. We actually have a representative on the principals group, Dr. David Saxberg, who was actually out in DC and advocating for title funds, which congressionally, if you paid attention to some of that, title funds are really in jeopardy altogether. They're really kind of under attack. And so there's a lot of advocacy that happens both from the state level, but also the local level to continue to push that forward. Thank you for that.
I just have one. Do you have any sense, even just broadly, what those uncaptured numbers might be? In other words, your final tally came in at 950 some odd students. Is there room for a 10% increase if we found everyone and got the application to them? Is it what kind of growth could we see if we spent some of our capital and time and resources on that effort?
Thank you, President Berger, and members of the board. That's really hard to tell. Obviously, you saw a dip this year in our census numbers. We continue to push out that free and reduced lunch application as much as we can to get as many people as we can. The other thing that's really important is that we have other programs that also, that form needs to be filled out. And so by filling out that form, it also opens the doors for potentially other programs that they may qualify for. And so really it's just the more we can educate, the more we can continue to have people fill out that free and reduced lunch form, the better off it is for our district. To specifically answer your question though, that would be very hard to estimate. Obviously, we saw this dip, and so I would anticipate that those numbers previously were probably there. Maybe we just haven't fully captured them. And so how do we go about that? Again, we've looked at, to Board Member Flynn's question, how are we advocating for that? Continuing to try to think of new ways to send those out and make sure that people are aware of that and educate them. We're always open to ideas on that. I know Grand Forks Central did a really good job of sending all of the forms out to all of their families, and they saw an increase, a spike. So they did print off everyone and sent it out, and they saw a spike of numbers. And so continuing to look at different ways we can do that and making sure that we're trying to get as many forms as we can back would only help our numbers. So thank you.
Any other questions, clarifying comments on 4A? Thank you.
Thank you.
4B, NDSBA opportunities for board member development. I believe this is Dr. Brenner.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. President. I can't give you what page number it is in your packet, only the link is in your packet. For me, it's item 4B. So pursuant to Grand Forks School Board Policy BE, school board members are here and notified of the following opportunities for board member development sponsored by the North Dakota School Boards Association. And so for us this year, it would be new board member Jay Clevin, who would be attending on October 24th and October 25th, and also our new board member who will be appointed this evening. We would ask that person to attend as well. And just know that it is carte blanche. It is not just for new board members, but returning board members, you can certainly attend as well. And particularly during a legislative year, I think it's a good idea to get as many folks to Bismarck as possible. So if you are interested in attending along with Mr. Clevin and our newest board member who will be voted upon or seated here later on in this meeting, please let Cindy know and she will make arrangements for your hotel room, travel, etc. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay. Item 4C, High School Attendance Intervention Plan. This is also Dr. Brenner along with Dr. Chris Arison and Mr. John Strandell.
Thank you. The gentlemen have been introduced. I am just really pleased, along with Ms. Galach and Mr. Bakke, that we've had two lead principals at the high school level take a look at chronic absenteeism, not only here that it's happening in our school district, but across the country, but have put together a plan for them to share with you, and this would be, again, in the memo, it talks about this as a discussion item. It would be operational, but I'm just pleased that they put some time, sweat, and effort into this, and they'll present their information to you, and we'll stand for questions at the end. So, Dr. Arison, Mr. Strandell, thank you very much for being here.
All right, thanks, Dr. Brenner, members of the board. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, talk with you a little bit about our attendance proposal that we're bringing forward, and I'm here to answer any questions or anything that you may have regarding our new plan. We spent about the last 3-4 months working on this plan, crafting this plan, a lot of discussion, a couple summer meetings that we had with Catherine and John and I and their associate principals. And back to school this past week, we spent a good part of a morning sharing the attendance plan, getting teachers' feedback, giving them time to process it. And overall, the feedback we received from staff, so I'm speaking for Red River, is overall very positive. And they're looking forward to, and I think John had said the same thing at Central's, that they're looking for something needs to be done. The chronic absenteeism that we've seen over the past, well, really since COVID, has just been exponential. And you have some numbers in your packet there. But even before COVID, we always felt like attendance was a problem back then, and you can see from your numbers, it's doubled in some areas, even maybe tripled in other areas. We're just seeing a significant increase in the amount of students missing school for a variety of reasons, and really it comes down to student success, student achievement. We know that the best way for students to be successful is to be in school every day, stay caught up, hear from their teachers, learn from their teachers, learn from their classmates, collaborate with one another, and we're just seeing a really significant decrease ever since COVID. And like Dr. Brenner said, this is not just a Grand Forks thing, it's a nationwide thing. We talk at our EDC principals meeting, we talk about attendance. All schools are facing it, and we just really feel strongly that we need to try to do something to get kids to school. And I'll talk more about at the end when I come back on. But you can see Red River's numbers there, the why, at least for Red River. We just did a quick little snapshot when you look at semester before COVID, 2018, 2019, quarter one, and then 23, 24, quarter one. And you'll just see the family leaves more than doubled. The sick leaves more than doubled. I mean, we're just seeing significant increase, and a lot of appointments, a lot of different reasons for kids being gone, and some of them are, obviously very legitimate reasons for kids to be in school, but there's also some times where we think kids can be back in school a little bit quicker. And so we really just kind of want to tackle this and see if we can make a difference with students and their attendance. So with that, I'll pass it over to John.
Thank you, President Berger, Dr. Brenner, members of the board. Just to continue on the theme of why now, and why this plan, Dr. Arison has already cited a couple of those things, but I think number one, learning is a social process. It isn't meant to be done in isolation, so we think that's best done in a school setting. And obviously there are times where online learning is appropriate, but we do believe that the majority of the learning should be face-to-face. Secondly, I think we just need to reprioritize attendance. When COVID happened, attendance became more of an option for folks, and we left that in the hands of parents at home with their child's health in their best interest to take over those decisions. And at that time, prior to COVID, our student handbook did say that a student could not miss more than 8 days in a class in a semester in the high school. 8 days. There were times at that point, I was an assistant principal prior to COVID, and if a student did get over 8 absences, that we would put them on an attendance contract. So some of what you're seeing here isn't new, it's just bringing to life an old practice that we did use. In addition to why else are we doing, I'm going to say one more thing. Given Red River's data, and there'll be central data we'll share with you in a minute, but I think we ask ourselves the question, were students actually ill twice as often in 23-24 as they were in 2018-19? I don't believe they were. Attendance patterns and even, I think, the decisions made by students and their parents about when their kids stay home, they've changed over time. And I think we're kind of looking at a reset with this, okay? Another reason is teacher retention, quite honestly. When kids are gone and they come back to school, well, first of all, Google Classroom and technology just makes the sharing of assignments and sometimes tasks, readings, et cetera, easy for someone to access when they're not in school. But that doesn't mean when they come back, they're ready, that they've gotten everything they should just from that online access. So the question to teachers daily is, well, I was gone yesterday, so can you kind of catch me up? That's a lot for a teacher, particularly when you look at the numbers of absences we're talking about. So it does add a strain to teachers to reteach those kids, to get them organized, to make sure they are caught up with their peers who were in school. It's a strain on resources, and particularly our human resources. So as times have changed, practices that we used to rely upon and supports from outside agencies are not at the level that they used to be. So juvenile court and the idea of truancy, really I think they're overwhelmed with the amount of referrals that they're getting, and they're just not taking truancy the way they had in the past. The same is true for a practice called educational neglect, where social services would get involved when they would feel a family was not really keeping up their end of the bargain and getting their kid to school. They're also understaffed, and the volume of referrals they're getting are high, as you're seeing in those numbers. They're not able to really respond to those. So those supports that schools have typically relied upon in the past are not there. And the answer that we get that is we're going to push that back to the school to address these issues with the same staffing we've had, by the way. Last part is school accountability is related to attendance. If you look at choice ready numbers for high schools, one piece of our accountability pie, as they call it, is related to school attendance, and that's a piece also of the Choice Ready report. So we're being held accountable for people coming to school, and the handbook currently says that school attendance is the responsibility of the student and the parent or guardian. But that it does become a measure that we are judged upon, quite honestly, as whether or not our kids are coming to school, and sometimes feel like that's a really high mountain to climb to get a child at a different home that we're not part of to come to school. It's kind of a lot. So to look at the plan itself, you've had a chance to look at this. I know it was included in your packet. We're going to acknowledge from the start, this plan is not perfect, and the numbers in the plan are uncomfortably high to us. I think we use the word in meetings. These numbers are embarrassingly high to us. But looking at what we're trying to do, we feel like this is the place we have to start. And hopefully this is a plan that we can manage that has an impact. So you see, medical notes signed by a doctor, school-sponsored activities are the only excused absences. Anything else would be considered unexcused and would count in a total as we're looking at absences in relation to the tiered approach in this plan. And tier 1, quite simply, is if somebody has missed 6 times in a semester, there will be a text to parents and guardians at home letting them know they've reached tier 1 and a link to this plan for them to refer to see what the next steps in the tiers are. Tier 2 is 10 absences in a semester. Again, that number's too high. But at that point, there'll be a phone call, a meeting with a family, oftentimes involving a social worker, where we're going to dig deeper into the barriers to student attendance. What is going on within the home? How can we help and support you? And then to let them know that the next tier, tier 3, looks different, just so they're aware of the tiers and the steps there. Aside from all of this, this attendance plan really is going to focus on not necessarily the kids who've been chronically absent from elementary to middle school to high school. They will be a part of this plan. However, we don't know that this plan is going to necessarily have the same impact on them as it's going to have for a large chunk of students in the middle, quite honestly. Tier 3 is 12 absences. Some people may say, well, you've jumped from 6 to 10, and I see the last one's 18. Why isn't it 14? It's a good question, because 14 is just too high. I think we were all just really uncomfortable with that number and felt like we needed to bring it down to 12. So at the 12 absence mark, this is really similar to the practice I talked about pre-COVID, an attendance contract. At this point, a student would be put on a contract that basically says, if you are gone any days beyond 12, on those days you are absent, you would not get credit for any work that is due that day or any work that is assigned that day. So quite honestly, it becomes an academic consequence for a student to be gone. We go back to those numbers of especially kids that were staying home by parent request or were sick, we feel like a lot of those kids probably, it's too easy to stay at home. We've made it too easy to stay at home. We want that decision to be made a little bit more thoughtful by both parent and guardian and student and get them back into school. And I think this piece of the intervention plan is the one that will have the more motivational factor for folks in those areas. And then the last piece of the intervention plan is the drop or transfer at 18 absences. I'm going to say 18 is more than we used to allow for an entire year, and that's how many are in the semester. So again, we're acknowledging that number is too high. When that happens, when someone has reached that 18 mark, our goal is not for them to be out of school. Our goal for them is to figure out what's another option for you, what can we enroll you in online, where are you at in terms of credit? Are you a student who is a candidate for community high school? When will credit recovery happen? So we want to make a credit recovery plan for those students. But at some point, if you are on the rolls and you're not coming to school, we probably need to drop you from that class. So those are the tiers. The last piece of data from Central High School now will probably make a little bit more sense because you have some context. At first look, you're probably wondering, what are all these numbers meaning related to 12? Well, now you know 12 is tier 3 within the plan. And we put this number together because basically this tells you how many students would have an attendance contract, which is typically managed by an assistant principal. So in 2017-18, 336 kids at Central High School would have been eligible for a contract. Last year, almost 700. That's a lot of contracts. It's a lot of kids. It's a lot to manage. However, we're back to that point of what else can we do? We're not really sure we have any other options. We think this is the best option we have in front of us. We also acknowledge that year 1, possibly into year 2, could be rough as people sort of reset their habits and we kind of adjust to that volume of work and how we manage these attendance contracts that do result in academic consequences. So that is why that piece of data was included within your packet. Okay, where do we expect gains? Dr. Harrison, you want to take over this one?
Yeah, so really our hope is the gains that we're going to see, our kids are going to be in school. They're going to be with their teachers. John talked about Google Classroom. Our teachers have gotten really, really good at Google Classroom, putting all their assignments in Google Classroom. But what they miss is that in-class participation, that in-class engagement with the content. Our classrooms at Red River and Central, we were never designed to be an online learning experience. For any of you that know anything about online learning, there's different forms, there's discussion. There's a lot of things that go on that are built into an online platform. Our schools are not built to be online. And what's happening is teachers put assignments in Google Classroom. A student comes to school, they were gone, say on a Monday, they come to school Tuesday, what did I miss? The teacher's like, well, we didn't have any assignments, but we had direct instruction. I had some small group discussion. We had some problem solving. We did a lot of different things that day, but you missed it. Now, you didn't miss any assignment, but you missed all the activity and all the content that went on in class that day. So our gains, obviously, our school board has set some goals when it comes to literacy and math, and having kids in school is the best way for them to be successful, to stay on task, to reach graduation. We've seen a dip in our graduation rates. Prior to COVID, we were about 95, 96% graduation rate, and we've dropped down to 91% since COVID. And a lot of that has to do with student attendance and students just getting far behind and not able to keep up on their academics. So what we really hope to see is a gain. Our focus is really on that middle 60-70% of student. As John said, we're still going to have some of our truant kids, the ones that we are really working hard with our social workers, with our MTSS teams, with our counselors, and all the different supports that we have in place to try to break down barriers for those students. What we're really trying to focus on is that middle group of students where it's just become really easy for them to miss school. You always have that group of students, probably 20% of our students, that never miss a day of school, right? They'll go all year and maybe miss 1 or 2 days of school. But it's that middle group, that 60% of kids, where we're just seeing a substantial amount of attendance issues. You know, we talk about chronically absent. The U.S. Department of Education says a student that is chronically absent, if they miss 10% of a school year, that 10% includes all days. That includes medical, academic, or extracurricular events, anything like that. Well, in our school year, we have 174 contact days, if I counted right. So that's 17 days. A kid is considered chronic absenteeism. If they've missed 17 days in a year, we've set that number at 18 for a semester. So when we look at our numbers, we still don't feel great about it, like John said, but we figure it's a starting point and it's a place that we can hopefully get kids, you know, rethinking that, do I really feel, am I really sick, or do I just not feel like going to school? Oh, the teacher already put the assignment in Google Classroom. I can just work on it at home and get it handed in when I get there. We want kids to have the experience. We want them to be in their classroom. We want them to be with their peers. We want them to be with their teachers. So we think this could be the best way to start that process. Anything I missed? Anything you can think of? So again, academic achievement, success, graduation rates, that's what we're going for. We've seen dips since COVID. You see the numbers of attendance, and if we can hopefully make a difference with some new attendance policies. Questions from anybody?
Thank you both. Just a reminder before we open it up for questions, this is not an action item for the board. They're not here seeking approval. This is an informational session, but there is an opportunity for some Q&A if you have a relevant clarifying question you wish to pose for either or both of them. Amber first and then Jay, please.
I have a couple questions. First of all, thank you. I want to acknowledge that I'm not in high school every day working with these students, so I'm coming from a place of curiosity with some of my questions. So first thing, are we tracking who is absent and why currently? So do we have a breakdown of demographics, socioeconomic status, you know, why are they absent, like when we're having conversations with them and their family? Is it lack of transportation? Is it lack of, you know, are you able to break down that data? Not here specifically, but can you?
I think to break it down exactly, I know we have our MTSS team, and we have, when you look at Power School, we have our students in red, green, yellow, you know, and that's all based on attendance and grades. So our MTS team meets every Friday to go over our at-risk students, and we call them, those are our level 4s. So we look at that data, and we look at how many people are missing school, why they're missing school. We have our counselors are all involved in that, our associate principals, our social worker, special ed coordinator, all involved in those MTSS meetings to look at that data and find out ways that we can break down some of those barriers. I mean, our social workers doing home visits, they're checking with our real chronic, you know, students that are absent and trying to find out, is it transportation? You know, what is keeping you from that? Is it your schedule, right? Some kids are working late at night and a 8 o'clock class is really tough. So then we adjust schedules and they start at 9 o'clock instead of 8 o'clock. So there's a lot of things that we do with that. Mm-hmm. I think if we really wanted to get back and dig down some data, we could probably get some of that for you. But really our purpose is trying to get those middle of the road kids. We have a pretty good thumb on our chronic truant students and why they're not coming to school. It's our middle of the road kids. For example, we'll have a kid check out at 9 o'clock for a dentist appointment and they don't come back to school. You know, we all know that dentist appointments take approximately an hour, right? So, I mean, there's all those different things that kind of go into all these attendance reasons and what we're seeing with the amount of attendance that we have.
Okay. What's currently being done? So we're talking about kind of this intervention plan, and I appreciate hearing about it. I certainly think this is operational, but I also am curious about school board policy and how that relates to, like how we go to DPI and we're, providing an educational experience. But what's the changes here that is different from what we're doing?
Sure. Well, considering we've taken that language out of the student handbook, there really hasn't been a structure in place to really be at the core of the conversation with the family, but the district did hire an attendance specialist last year. So at Central High School, I can give you our experience. The first week of school last year, any student who missed 2 days, we made a list of them within that first week, and we split it all up, called home, did those same things. Sorry, we haven't seen Sam in school. Is there something we can do to help? Is there a reason why Sam's not coming to school? What are the barriers you might have? Identified those things, and then, of course, as needed, got a social worker involved to make sure transportation wasn't an issue. If someone needed tickets, they weren't aware school started, all of those things. So we continue to do those things. They'll still happen, but then you can make referrals to a statewide agency that then sort of decides it's called child in need of services. So we made referrals if the attendance issues continued, but again, the volume was so great, there just wasn't a great response to that. So those things are happening. Of course, a family has access to Power School. They can see where they're at in terms of their absences, but there really isn't any guidance from the school saying, remember, you can't miss more than these days right now. So it is loose, and we've really contributed to that. Unknowingly, during COVID, when we were allowing parents to make those decisions, I think it just became, as I said earlier, it's an easier decision to keep kids out of school.
So right now, you said last year someone was late 2 times. I don't see tier 1 being 2 times. I see it being, they have to be missed 6 times before we reach out. So
Correct.
is there a reason from the shift of 6 and frankly, you said this is too high. I certainly know that sometimes you have to meet people where they're at, and coming from a military family, I think my mom would start with them, but to me, it seems 6 seems like we're already retroactively reaching out.
Sure.
But-
I think the number of absences and how early you get to that point is kind of that's why we did that last year. If in 1 week, the first week of school, you miss 2, the lights are flashing, right? Are you a chronically absent student? So we'll still continue those other practices. It's just that everybody will get the same, at 6, you'll get a text.
Sure. Got
Even
it.
if that was in October or early November versus the first week of school.
Okay, and then the text. Can parents reply to that text message?
No.
Okay, so how do we know that they received the text? There's spam filters nowadays. There's my kids are on my phone and they swipe off my text and I don't get it. So more so just like, how are we communicating about the communication? Is an email more appropriate? Why the text feature?
And we could do both.
Yeah.
We certainly could. I think we find that the texts are received, so we get rates of return on our messages.
Okay,
The texts are more successful than the emails to most
Okay.
folks, so that was the reason for that option.
okay. My other question is maybe just helpful feedback about conversations I've had with parents. I think especially given like mental health and burnout among our students, we put the responsibility of attending school on the children and the parents. So as a parent, I would say, I'm going to keep my kid home because mentally they need a day and they need a break. Additionally, if they had a cold but maybe didn't rise to the level of the fever, I may or may not have good health care, so I'm not going to take them in, and that might be a barrier for me to have to take them in and get a doctor's note. So I think the message just seems a little conflicting when we're saying it's the responsibility of the parent, and I get you take your kid out at 10 for a doctor's appointment and they won't come to school. But I'm just wondering how maybe we can, I don't know, it seems like in some instances, parents are trusted and parents are not, and we're giving them the responsibility to make the decisions. But if I said, I can't afford to take them to the doctor and get a doctor's note, what kind of message are we sending to them saying you have to provide a medical note?
Sure. I think that tier 2 is meant to then dig deeper into those things that you're talking about.
Sure.
So our goal isn't to be punitive.
Yeah.
It is really to find out what's going on here, and can we help out with that first at the same time. So if you had a cold and another day you needed a day for yourself, does that equal 12 days in a semester? That's a lot of days.
Yeah.
I think that's our response. We still think that's a high number.
You said something that I think is important, and I know we're not at the place in the agenda here, but for a punitive solution, or a non-punitive solution, I wonder if at some point we could get an update on the virtual school and possible progression of if that's an option. Again, I'm looking at, this seems more punitive. I know there's structures in place to not be, but when you're looking at, we're already at 12 absences and things like that, and you can't get extra credit or credit for that assignment, then I wonder if there is the patterns that we can find where we're being a lot more proactive for that.
Students do have the option of using North Dakota Center for Distance Education.
Sure.
Yeah, that's one of their options. And then the one that we haven't, we probably just referenced it briefly in here. Edgenuity is another platform we use, and typically more for credit recovery than anything else. But
Sure.
an online option through NDCDE does exist.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, thank you for answering all my questions.
Jay?
Thank you. Maybe you, sorry, I'm not in rock star mode tonight, sorry. Just a couple things quick. This is a high school program, obviously, both of you are high school principals. Is there commensurate effort K through 8, where habits really start? And it probably doesn't even need a response, but maybe just something to contemplate, because this is very important stuff. And then you both self-acknowledge that you would like this to be tighter and more restrictive. Is this just year one in a multi-year effort to get where we want to get?
Yep, exactly. I think we're going to really reflect upon how this is going as the year's going on, and know where the nuances that need to be made here, what adjustments need to be made. Yep. This is the first time at the bat.
I got one thing too.
Others? Dr. Lund?
Jay, I can respond to your question too, is K through 8, in some of our research and some of looking at what communities do for improving overall school attendance. The research I've seen is the communities that do the best, and that is it's a community-wide effort, right? It's in the hospitals, it's in the banks. One thing that I saw was a Strive for 5, right? That was a community initiative, strive for less than 5 absences in a school year. And community members got on board, and you'd see it in grocery stores, and you'd see it in hospitals, and you'd see it at the local universities. And so, maybe that's something we as a district can work towards when we start looking at attendance, but communities that have done really, really well have made it a broad-based, community-wide push.
Dr. Lund?
Thank you. Thank you for doing this and your teams for doing this. I think this is a great start. I think, as everybody has commented, including you two, we will probably have to tighten this up. When it gets down to the medical side, Amber brought up medical notes. You got to take that with a grain of salt. I can tell you, I will have to quadruple my clinic hours to be able to see all the kids that need clinic notes. And what typically happens is you'll get a parent that'll call and they'll say, Johnny's had a fever of 102 on Monday and Tuesday. He didn't go to school. I need a note to go back to school. And it's like, number one, they don't all need to go to the doctor just because they're sick, but this will force them to do it. But they've been in that mode for a long time. So take it with a grain of salt, these medical notes, because a lot of times you're going to get providers that write them and they haven't seen the patients. Your question about is there a lot more illness post-COVID than pre-COVID? The answer, I think, is there's not a lot more physical illness pre-COVID and post-COVID, but I can tell you mental illness has gone up skyrocketed. And I don't know how many times I've seen patients who come in and say, well, I missed Monday, but I was having a horrible mental day. So I think mental illness type days have gone up significantly. Now, whether it's valid or not, I'm not answering that, but I can just tell you that that's happened. So that gets back, I think, to a little bit about the why. Why are some of these kids, I think, are missing so much school because they have undertreated or untreated mental health issues that you two can't solve by yourselves, the district can't solve by it. It takes a village, as they say. And I think, but that's something I think we need to keep on our radar, because there's no question that's part of it. Hopefully it's not, as Amber asked, hopefully it's not transportation issues or things like that, because I think those things are probably easier to solve than some of these other things. I just think we need to keep track, and I assume through MTSS, you probably do have a better idea of 10% of kids are missing because of this, 5% are missing because of that, because that's how we solve some of the problems, is we know exactly where to target and stuff. But thank you for starting this, and thank your teams that worked on it. I appreciate it.
Other questions? Yeah, Amber.
I forgot to ask this, but it was on my notes. Did you use a model, or did you look at different models of what other schools are doing, or ask your partners? How did you come up with this?
Well, we had asked at an EDC principals meeting in June, what's everybody doing for attendance? We always joke, as soon as someone at an EDC principals meeting says attendance, all you see are the tops of people's heads because they just stare at the floor. Fargo and West Fargo really said they really weren't doing anything. Valley City and Wahpeton, I think, had actual drop dates. 11 absences in one district is when they would drop a kid from a class, and the other one was 20. And otherwise, everybody said, it's the same issue that we all have, and we really don't know how to approach it. So this was based upon the old contracts we used to use. We just put this together on our own.
Well, given that, I'm appreciative that you're doing something and not just allowing it to slide by. So I look forward to how it progresses. Thank you.
Yep.
Others? Okay. Thank you both very much. Item 4D, Leadership Coach Update. This is just for information, and if you have clarifying questions, you're welcome to ask them. Back on May 20th, the Grand Forks School Board voted unanimously to accept the recommendations set forth by then Board President Amber Flynn related to her investigation into a complaint filed by the Grand Forks Principals Association. Just briefly on a couple of those other recommendations, the 360 evaluation will be taken up by the Superintendent Evaluation Committee. That committee meets next on September 16th. Dr. Brenner has been meeting and continues to meet with and make his calendar available to all principals in the district. If you remember, the action was to request biweekly standing meetings from July through May 2025, as well as 2 visits to each school board each year. Josh Anderson, as Vice President, and I receive regular updates on the frequency of those. That's not the purpose of this discussion item, but I did want to briefly mention those. The action item that I want to provide an update on is this. Grand Forks Public Schools will hire a leadership coach chosen by the school board president and vice president to provide feedback on Dr. Brenner's leadership and assist in cultivating and rebuilding good relationships with administrators. Again, this recommendation was unanimously supported by the board in May. At that time, if you'll remember, Amber Flynn was serving as president and I was serving as vice president. Amber and I have taken this hiring process very seriously, and it is also true that board leadership has changed as of July 8th, so we're a bit in the transition time. As Amber and I have gone through the vetting process with various leadership coach candidates, I've also kept current Vice President Josh Anderson in the loop about our progress. After casting a wide net for potential leadership coaches and determining the most pressing needs in our district and among our administrators, we are very close to finalizing our choice. We're planning to bring our final hiring recommendation to one of our September meetings. So just wanted you all to know that the work is being done behind the scenes, and that will come back to you shortly. Any questions or clarifying remarks? Okay, thank you. Item 5A, the consent agenda. I would seek a motion to approve the items in the consent agenda. It's moved by Bill. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Dr. Lunn. We'll take a roll call vote.
Larson?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yep.
Anderson?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Palmasino?
Yes.
Lunn?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion carries. 5B, general fund financial statement. Brandon Bombach.
Yes, President Berger, and members of the board, providing here a general financial statement. This is a format that you're going to get used to seeing every second meeting of the month. I'll provide that update. It's always looking back to the prior month. So what this is for is from July 1 to July 31st. So you'll notice there's not a lot of numbers on this financial report, so I'll kind of take the opportunity just to kind of orient us with these reports so you get used to knowing what you're looking at each month. But the summary of this is that general fund revenues were $163,000, whereas the expenses were $2.8 million. So that puts the expenses over the revenue of $2.68 million. That's the highest level summary. And I'll provide just a little bit more information to remind you this is quite normal this time of year. So the two reports that we have here, and then they're complemented by a couple of infographic slides here, is the first is a general fund financial statement. This here shows the budget versus the actuals for that fiscal year. So that's how we're going to report on this fiscal year 25. The first half of the first page of that report is a summary. So you can see the revenues are laid out there in the three main sources of local, state, and federal, and then the other category kind of rolls up those numbers so you can see overall revenues, and then expenditures are similarly bucketed to 4 buckets of salaries, benefits, other expenses, and utilities. And so that gives you a very quick glance of how we're doing against the budget in those categories. What follows is all the detail below. Just to note, this is against the preliminary budget, so that first column, preliminary budget, is just what was passed as a preliminary budget. Of course, we have a hearing September 23rd, and the final budget that'll come into play. So as you scroll down through that initial report, you can see there's more detail within local sources, state sources, federal sources, and so it matches exactly what was at the top here. You get into the expense side, and ultimately they'll sum to the same dollar amount. The numbers are small in that it's the first month. It's also July, when we have a lot of people who aren't on contract just yet. So happy to answer any questions, but especially for the first few months of this report provided to you, it's a little bit of timing and just everything getting going. But again, happy to answer any questions. The second component of any report given monthly is this comparison report. Since it's not an even spend throughout the year, as in we spend more in those 9 months and not all 12 months, and the revenues change as well, this report helps us kind of put into perspective, are these normal numbers for this point in the year? So this has a similar summary on the first portion of that second report. It has revenues and expenditures summarized just the same as the first report. And then there's a text box. This is where I'll take the time to highlight any anomalies, any comments, any things I'd really like to point your attention to, even prior to the meeting or prior to your questions. I'll put those right in that text box, and they'll correspond to lines that are a little bit below. So I'll be asking you to say, look at this, we're watching this, and where to look for more detail. As you go down through this, you'll notice again that first column is preliminary, actual, and then the actual against last year. So a lot of the numbers you can see are going to match up pretty closely, and other things won't. One example would be in the state sources on the revenue side, the career and technical education. You can see we have just about $74,000 in revenue in the CTE line that wasn't there last year. That'd be a time where you say, what's going on there? And that has to do with the RWIP grant and paying for equipment associated with the Career Impact Academy. So the rest of the report is provided to you there, and then I would just comment quickly on the graphics. is that I'll provide always a general fund revenue summary in graphical depiction as a percentage of the budget. So how much a percentage of on our way to budget here. And you'll see not only the current fiscal year, but also the two prior. And I should asterisk, you probably won't see the current fiscal year because a number as small as it is at this point in the year doesn't really show, but you'll see how those bars will come up. And then I'll give you a quick glance about how we're doing revenue-wise against prior years. Similarly, that next slide will give you a quick glance about how we're doing compared to prior year's expenses. And then what can be helpful, especially with the goal of, increasing the general fund balance by the end of the fiscal year, you can see where it comes together for a general fund balance, kind of graphical depiction. So again, happy to answer any specific questions. There aren't a lot of numbers or data at this point. But the administrative recommendations to approve the general fund financial statement is outlined for the period of July 1, 24 through July 31, 24.
Any questions for Brandon? Jay, go ahead.
So is this an old reporting format, or is this revamped new this year?
No, this has been used in the past, yeah.
Thanks.
Other questions? Amber?
I wonder, we haven't historically done this, but we have a lot more funds, I guess, that are like with our projects and stuff coming through the building fund and utilized through there. I wonder if part of our financial reports monthly might include a building fund update, or if you think that's more appropriate, like quarterly, I don't know, but we haven't really done that historically, but knowing that some of the funds are shifted from general to building now and we're utilizing some of those, I wonder what the thought might be behind there.
I think it's a great suggestion. I think that it sounds a lot like what's taking place at the Finance Committee as a conversation, saying we're going to talk about what the guardrails need to be on that fund.
Yeah.
And a part of that then too is what's the reporting on that fund. So perhaps that's a place to start that conversation and inform just how often the board would like to see that, or how often the Finance Committee would like to see it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any others? Seeing none, I'd seek a motion to approve the general fund financial statement for the period of July 1 through July 31, 2024. It's moved by Jeff and seconded by Josh. Any discussion? We'll take a roll call vote.
Lund?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Palmesino?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion carries. Item 5C, appointment of board member for midterm vacancy. Brandon Bombach.
Thank you, members of the board. A little bit of facts here coming from the cover memo included in the board packet, that we do have a vacancy that's existent due to the midterm resignation of board member Monty Gockler. At the July 8th regular board meeting, this body enacted on the selection process as articulated by Board Policy BBC. That corresponds with the application process, in which opened up a 2-week window that ran from August 5th into August 19th. During that time, we received 4 applications, and they're stated in the memo here in order of a blind draw, not just alphabetical order, but a double blind draw. And they are Cameron Murphy, Jacqueline Hassett, Cheryl Hodak, and Joel Schleicher. And all applicants have been invited to tonight's meeting. In accordance to policy BBC, applicants may make a statement to the school board if they choose, and the school board members may discuss application information with the applicant. So something that pertains to what's within the application itself, not questions otherwise not stated on the application. And for process, outside of the board's discretion to invite those comments or how you'd like to solicit those, the selection process, I can add a little bit more detail here. That board policy articulates that 1 or more votes will be used to reduce the field from our current of 4 members to 2 members. And that would be a final selection of 2. During that time, I have ballots here printed out of all 4 members in the order that I had spoken them per the double blind. I have 8 of these ballots, so it would be only the elected board members present tonight, and not school board members or representation from GFEA or administration, but just the board members would vote. In the first round, you would have 2 votes, and you would vote for 2 of the 4. And from there, the field would be narrowed to 2. There is a contingency that if the second and third place vote getters were the same, we would re-vote in a process where the 4th voter would be eliminated, and you would vote on just the remaining to break the tie. And once it's brought down to 2 final candidates, we will print new ballots with those names. We will distribute those, and then each eligible voter will have 1 vote for the 2 candidates. It's possible that there could be a tie there, and we would vote again up to 3 times. And at that time, we would draw a name, one of the 2. So there's a contingency plan to see that through if there's not a selection done through the voting. And then ultimately, that would select the board member or anticipated board member to be seated at the next board meeting. So with that, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And so just one point of clarification before we move forward with applicant remarks. I see in your memo, the administrative recommendation is that the board proceeds with the appointment as provided for in Century Code and our school board policy. Is that the first step to proceed with the appointment as provided for? Or have we already as a school board moved forward in that direction? Could you just clarify that?
You're asking if you need to take a voting action to say we're going to proceed with that? I don't think so. I think that, like you're pointing out, that's already been agreed upon, but.
Okay, then with that, per policy BBC, we do have time for applicants to make a statement to the school board. And in the interest of perhaps clarity, and we'll take them in the order that they were drawn, as each applicant comes forward, if they so choose to make a statement while that candidate or applicant is at the microphone, then I'll ask school board members if they have questions about the application to ask them at that time. And remember, those questions are just about information stated in the application, no broader questions or information seeking. Okay? So according to Brandon's list then, I would invite Cameron Murphy, our first applicant, to the microphone. You may make a statement to the school board if you choose.
Thanks, Brandon. Well, it's pretty simple. You guys know I've ran. So the biggest thing is, of the 4 applicants, I'm the only one who stood for election. So just over 2,300 votes, and it's mostly a matter of, as a body, we had a resignation just after the election, and do we want to respect the will of the voters or not for someone who actually stood for election? So I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions from board members about Cameron Murphy's application form, the information contained therein? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Our next applicant, Jacqueline Hassett. You may make a statement to the school board if you choose.
Hello, everyone. You have my information in terms of like highlights of what would be on my CV or my resume. But I think one of the things I would encourage the board to think about in having a new person come on would be to look at the diversity of your board. Not just in terms of maybe color or gender, but also background experiences, life experiences, professional experiences, different things like that, where you're born. All those things create diversity of thought and perception. And I know with having worked on the board myself, having been a part of coalitions and other things in the community, the more diversity of thought that you have at the table, the better decisions are going to be made for the people of Grand Forks. And what made me think of that, I think it's one of the things that I really do bring. When we were listening to the principals, one of the things I thought about was the fact that I was one of those chronic absentee students. And not because I wasn't a good student, because I did go on to get, my 2 bachelor's degrees, a master's degree, and almost a doctorate. So it certainly wasn't an intelligence thing. It was definitely a life thing and a mental health thing. I had severe anxiety disorders. Because my home was not always stable. We moved a lot. I was homeless sometimes. We were very poor. And so, anything that's punitive doesn't quite make sense to me. And I think that's something I would have brought to that conversation. If really the purpose is to make sure that students are getting their education, a doctor's note doesn't change that. Whether you have an excused absence or not, you're gone from school, right? So you're going to need some sort of intervention. So not putting undue stress onto students would be a good idea. But that's just one example of some of the things that I have and I can contribute. Obviously, being a social worker, having been on the board during COVID, I think speaks to a little bit of my guts and assertiveness and my commitment to this district as we had very long meetings. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
Any questions from board members about Jacqueline Hassett's application form, the information contained therein? Thank you. Next applicant is Cheryl Hodek. You may make a statement to the school board if you choose.
Thank you for this opportunity. I was excited to put my application forth, and mainly because I have 43 years in K-12 education and higher ed. I've been a middle school principal, a high school principal. I was the director of teacher ed and school improvement for the state of North Dakota. I've worked in career and tech ed schools. I've worked with public parochial reservation schools. I love education. I have a passion for kids, and I have a passion for school administrators. My whole intent with my application was simple. I want to support you, and that's why I'm here. So, questions?
Any questions about Cheryl Hodek's application form or the information contained therein? Thank you. Our fourth applicant is Joel Schleicher. You may make a statement to the school board if you choose.
Thank you, President Berger, members of the board, and thank you for providing me this opportunity to speak on behalf of my board application and interest in filling the open board position. Back in 1996, and in an effort to move closer to my wife's family, we moved to Grand Forks as I assumed a teaching position at Valley Middle School. 28 years later, and serving the Grand Forks public school community as an educator, as a coach, as an associate principal, as a principal, as a district director of technology, and now as the University of North Dakota liaison and instructor for the Grand Forks Public Schools Masters in Teaching and Leadership cohort. I'm here to express my interest in continuing to serve Grand Forks Public Schools in another capacity as a board member. So I want to emphasize my commitment to this role. Serving on the board is not just about attending meetings, making decisions. It's about doing what's best for kids. After all, if we're doing what's best for kids, we are partnering with our teachers and advocating for all school and district support staff. If we are doing what's best for kids, we are empowering and supporting district and school administrators. If we are doing what's best for kids, we are stewards of our Grand Forks community's values now and in the future. I'm ready to take on this responsibility and work tirelessly to ensure that our schools are places where we provide, and in the words of our district's vision, diverse and meaningful experiences for all learners in a safe and supportive environment by fostering curiosity, inquiry, and innovation. We grow and learn together by embracing change and taking risks. So I want to acknowledge the critical role that our school board plays in shaping the future of our students and community. I am eager to contribute to the important work of this board and the success of our students, and I would be honored to serve, and I look forward to the possibility of working with each one of you to achieve our shared vision, goals for Grand Forks Public Schools, and thank you for considering my candidacy.
Any questions about Joel Schleicher's application form or the information contained therein? Jay?
I think you said you're currently working at UND, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, not in the district any longer?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions about the information in Joel Schleicher's application form? Thank you. Before we begin the ballot process, I just want to say publicly thank you to all four of you for your applications and for your willingness to serve. It's not easy to put oneself out there, so I just want to publicly commend all of you for your efforts and your interest. Brandon has the first ballot, and I just want to clarify one statement. Each board member has 2 votes and must select exactly 2 candidates as per policy BBC. I can find that and quote it if need be, but please know, board members, that on this ballot from this slate of 4 applicants, that you must vote for 2 candidates on the first ballot, reading directly from BBC, under limiting the field to 2 finalists.
Thank you for that. And just to offer here, Catherine and Matt are giving me a hand here around the table with the ballots. Once the voting is completed, they'll be collected again, and Matt will help me tally those, and then I will report those back to the board.
Just a point of order, Mr. President. Based on open meeting records, you do have to put your name at the top of the ballot.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. I'll report the results of the first vote here in order of the same candidates has been voted. So our first candidate, Cameron Murphy, 0 votes. Our second candidate, Jacqueline Hassett, 3 votes. Our third candidate, Cheryl Hodek, 6 votes. And our fourth candidate, Joel Schleicher, 7 votes. So this narrows the field to Cheryl Hodek and Joel Schleicher.
Thank you. It's my understanding that we're printing ballots with those 2 names. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
So
correct.
We'll take just a bit of time for those. And while that's happening, just a reminder that board members, when this new ballot is created, again, according to policy BBC, you will vote for only 1 candidate from among the 2 finalists. Of course, with 8 seated board members, as Brandon illustrated earlier, if there happens to be a 4-4 tie, we will vote a second and a third time if necessary. And after the third ballot with no simple majority, the appointment will be decided by a drawing of names.
The votes are tallied. Total votes for Cheryl Hodak, 7. Total votes for Joel Schleicher, 1. Cheryl Hodak is the highest vote earner.
Congratulations to Cheryl Hodak, our newest board member, and again, my thanks to all of our applicants. We look forward to your continued engagement. Move on to item 5D, policy review. Dr. Brenner, is that your cover letter, and perhaps Amber?
We met on August 1st. The minutes will reflect our discussion. We will take a vote of each of these I can't remember on the second reading, do we bundle them together or is it typical? Okay, so for the second reading, we would like to complete the second reading and the adoption of the policies as amended. ABBB, Community District Property, ABDA, Website Accessibility Policy, DGHA, Lactation Breastfeeding, FDE, Education of Special Education Disabled Students, GABAA, English Learners, and GABDB, Title Programs Dispute Resolution Procedure. So I will make a motion to adopt those.
It's been a motion by Amber and a second by Dr. Lund. Any discussion? We'll take a roll call vote.
Manley?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Palmasino?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yep.
Flynn?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion carries.
We will now complete the reading of the following complementing board regulation as amended. ABDA BR1. This is a board regulation. I will make a motion to complete the reading of the following board regulation as amended.
There's been a motion to complete the one reading of ABDA-BR1. Is there a second? Second by Jay. Any discussion? Take a roll call vote.
Anderson?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes.
Palmasino?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion carries.
Because of that, we will rescind the following we will rescind the following complementing board regulation ABDA BR2, website accessibility concerns, complaints, and grievances. So I make a motion to that effect.
There's been a motion by Amber to rescind regulation ABDA-BR2. Is there a second? Seconded by Bill. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Flynn?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Palmasino? Lund?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion carries. That's it for 5D, correct? Am I correct? We'll move on to 5E, consideration of renewal of shared parks and facilities use agreement for July 1, 2024 through June 30 of 2026. Brandon Bombach.
Yes, thank you, President Berger, members of the board. Each and every year, the Park District's an important partner with the school district, and there's a lot of back and forth and relationship between the two organizations. As facilities are used, in some cases, the school facilities like gymnasiums for parks and rec purposes, or the opposite where the school district will use or rent other facilities held by the Park District. This agreement has been the way we approach that actually every other year. You'll find that it's a one-year agreement, as that's what the board is limited to, but with an auto renewal clause for a second year. So this has been customary in recent history where we take it 2 years at a time, and that's what's exactly reflected here. I go through some of the things that were really quite normal or what we would see each year. When this agreement comes to the body, it would be customary that not a lot has changed, and the majority of that is the case here, except an increase on some of the annual fees. It has changed from 3 to 5% over recent years, and this reflects about a 5% increase. Exhibit A is articulated, and that's primarily the bulk of a lot of the agreement, in that it's football fields, soccer fields, softball fields, track, basketballs, playgrounds, and parking lots. So it's the agreement that really is the basis for the relationship between the Park District and the school district. That's Exhibit A. Exhibit B was something that was added to really carve out some of the use of hockey facilities in particular, and Exhibit C to carve out the use of Kings Walk Golf Course. And all those details are located there. There were some differences this year, and the second part of my memo articulates that. Ultimately, there's really an addition of sections D and E, and this would represent the greatest change. Section D is related to baseball activities. The Oxford Sports Complex, both Kraft and Montgomery Fields. Those prior were in Exhibit A as a part of that baseline. But there's been a lot of work done on those facilities, not just a grandstand and such, but the turf facilities. And through conversations with the Park District, it was a conversation to call that out separately. And the reason being is with the improvement to the facilities, this agreement does a couple of different things. It does increase the expense related to that because it's a higher end or higher quality facility that's in use, and so that rental agreement has gone up for all parties, and the school district is no different. But also in this agreement, it really contemplates an anticipated capital improvement as a later section within this agreement. So not only is it we have a higher quality facility, and that's why the rate has increased, but there's a commitment to renewing those turf, or in the next case of Section E, the courts. It's a promise from the Park District to keep those facilities at that high level. And also, another component is in prior agreements, the utility costs have been shared at the Oxford Sports Complex, and really that's been removed. I think it kind of cleans up that relationship with this facility about who owns and who operates and who's renting the facility. So the school district is not being charged those operational costs of utilities. They're being charged to use the facility. And the Park District is agreeing to maintain or keep in that level of maintenance the Oxford Sports Complex. That's Section D. Section E is the same premise of those principles, but it's an assortment of different tennis complexes. That's Packard, Register, University, and Wynn. And there's a couple of different schedules associated with that. The more competitive courts would be resurfaced every 5 years going forward, and the recreational could be stretched to closer to 8 years. But again, it's that same philosophy that's encaptured in the contract, that it's a promise from the Park District to maintain at that higher level facility. Ultimately, it does impact the overall number associated with this. Last fiscal year, we had calculated that agreement to really cost just under $132,000, all those components, all those exhibits together. And this would increase by just over 20% to $162,000. And again, that's primarily reflective of those facilities have been improved greatly, and that's exactly the quality of use that the Grand Forks Public School District will get out of this. After that initial increase, you would expect that I expect, and we've discussed this, that it would really be back on more of that cadence of what an annual increase could be, if it's 3 or 5%, depending on the year. So that's a change in this year's document. It's calling out the Oxford complex that's been newly enhanced, and those tennis court complexes, and coming with the promise of higher end facility maintenance going forward. It is and I should say that our activities director, Mike Biermeyer, and myself, in particular, spent a lot of time with George and the team at Parks District, going back and forth and saying, what's this change about, and trying to understand it, really coming to an agreement on that. I think it's administration would say we recommend this proposal here, and I think that our future youth sports, those ones called out, are going to receive a higher quality facility to use going forward. So the administrative recommendation is to renew the shared parks and facilities use agreement for the 1 year. That's July 1, 24 to June 30, 25, just with the knowledge that there's an automatic renewal for that second year. Either party could get out of that, but it wouldn't come back to the board next year unless there was any challenge with the relationship. It would renew for the second year. Happy to answer any questions about all of that.
Questions on this? Jay, and then Dr. Lund. Yep.
So there's increase in usage fees for the Oxford Sports Center. Is that helping fund a reserve fund for future improvement, or is that just more money because they're more nicer fields? First question, and then will any of this, is this all general fund money, or is this building fund? And I guess that's probably thinking out loud, it's probably more general fund money, but if you could answer that question too.
Yeah, happy to do that, Board Member Clevin. So I I would say what it is it's use for that new facility. It's a higher quality, and again, all those rental agreements have gone up across the board. Exactly how they're managing that for the future, I don't know. There's definitely a component of that, as in they've come, because we said, if we're paying this higher rate, we requested and they responded to say, what promises there, of this level facility into the future. Otherwise, it felt like, just a share in the capital cost. It was, what kind of operations can we expect in the future? And how often will these facilities be improved, if that makes sense? So there was an agreement too of the knowing when that next facility enhancement will take place, that we're a part of that, we see it coming too, and it's not a, hey, we did something so the rates are increasing. And second question is that it's the building fund. So historically, or recent history, it had been general fund operations. That makes some sense. Building fund eligible uses can be capital improvements and such, but it's also leases. This is a joint powers agreement, which is a lease. And through recent conversations, there's been a deliberate effort to pull some eligible expenses into the building fund and out of the general fund to prioritize other things within the general fund.
Dr. Lund?
No question, just a comment. I know in the past, this board has talked about the collaboration between the city of Grand Forks and the school district, including most recently CAT. I'd just like to highlight the great collaborative effort between the school district and the park district that predates, I think, all of us. I mean, Paul Messino might have been mowing lawns when he was 2 or something, but I mean, it's been in forever that I know. And I think if you think about how much money has been saved by the school district by collaboration between the park district and the school district, I just really think the park district needs to be thanked for a collaborative, great effort that everybody in the community benefits from. So thank you for that.
Other questions for Brandon? Yeah, sure. Dr. Brenner?
I just want to underscore that Brandon and Mike Biermeyer went back to the table several times with the Park District to really hammer this out. So I want to thank Brandon and Mike for that. And then just also want to highlight that Laura Cobb is the shared attorney between the Park District and the school district. So there's a cost savings there as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Jay?
One more, thank you. Were these costs kind of retroactive after the fact, or was there some prior notification that with these facility improvements, it'd probably be a negotiation on the usage fee?
It was more the latter, and when the last negotiated agreement was negotiated, it was right with, I was being introduced to the district, so there might have been some conversations. So I can't say that it didn't happen outright, but a part of the contemplating those future activities, or I forget how I phrased that here, the anticipated capital improvement, is to have that conversation earlier so we can see those things coming.
Other questions? Amber?
Just one. I think one, just looking at this again just now, maybe one thing that I am thinking about missing is like the opposite way. So school district property owned and used by park districts. So for example, Cushman has like track and field during the summer months, or like Monday nights or something. Is that reflected on here? Like, is there a facility usage for us, or is that kind of a swap type thing?
Yeah, just kind of glancing through, yes, is the answer to that. I don't know
Yes,
exactly.
to fee or swap.
Oh, sorry, it's in court. There's a little bit of history to the relationship that's based on trust. And when this thing was first put together, I think for a long time it operated without any agreement. It said you can use and we can use, and we'll assume our own liability.
Yeah.
And so when this came into creation, not less than 10 years ago even, they started to work out the logistics of that. It's included in here in that relationship. I don't think it'd be considered a swap any longer, because really it's tied into that Exhibit A more than any other that says, these are the ones we're going to let you use and these are the ones you're going to let us use.
I think that's what I was trying to find on here, on Exhibit A, and I only saw Cushman Field referencing the press box, not like the field, unless I'm missing something.
Well.
Not to try to be nitpicky about one
No.
event, but just crossed my mind.
No, so Exhibit A does fall on 2 pages within this agreement here, and on the second of the 2,
Oh, there we go.
is Park District usage
Yeah.
of school district property, and you'll see Cushman listed for multiple
track.
activities
Yep.
loosely and track
Okay.
activities.
The other thing I heard from parents this spring was, what are we doing for Cushman, Craft Field, now Oxford Complex, about how do we scrape the snow off in time to be available for the, and certainly we're at the mercy of winter, but how is that, like, is it the responsibility of the owner to do that? Or like, how does that relationship work?
Yeah, that would fall to the owner of the complex. I can speak for Cushman in that case, is that we've done that before. Sooner you get the snow off, the sooner the rest melts. You do got to be thoughtful about the wear and tear on that.
Yeah.
So you don't want to go there too quickly. I'm sure there are more experienced people in the room than
Yeah.
me to answer the rest of that question, but it falls to the facility owner as far as that maintenance.
Thank you.
Yes, Bill?
Bill's out there with his shovel.
I've been, a lot of that, it depends on the timing to when the snow comes. I think people, once it starts thawing, you don't want to put tractors on fields. Now with turf at all those fields, it makes it easier to get to that point. But just clarification on history, down the road, there's been times when the university insisted that we clean their field off, and we have done that, and we've left the other fields. And then when playing began, both fields were ready at the same time. So the biggest issue on fields, which parents don't understand, is there's frost underneath the fields, and you can't get the field playable till the frost is gone, and the frost takes its time. Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's not. So I think this agreement goes way back. I think on the sharing of facilities, what we've always done is the school districts were able to share playgrounds for their areas, where the park then could use the gyms for, we built Discovery School, and if there's a warming house that is going to be built in that location, its location will be right next to the school parking lot, so they can use the lot. So there was a lot of sharing, and that goes back to the 70s when the sharing started. I wasn't employed by the Park District when that started, but a lot of that sharing has saved the taxpayers money. I think one of the biggest examples of that is to build the middle school at South Middle School after the flood. I think the school district federal guidelines meant that they would have had to buy another 20 acres, but because of the shared relationship with the Park District, FEMA waived that relationship so they could just build the school on a footprint of the school and then utilize the park property around it. So it has been a real good, agreement between both parties.
Yes, Dr. Lund.
Like I said, it predated all of us except for Pomacino.
And I'll be happy to make the motion to accept the contract.
There's been a motion by Bill. Let me just make sure I have the wording of this. To renew the Shared Parks and Facilities Use Agreement with the Grand Forks Park District for the period from July 1, 2024 to June 30, 2025, with the knowledge of automatic renewal from July 1, 2025 to June 30, 2026, unless otherwise terminated by the parties. Is there a second?
Clevin.
Seconded by Jay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Clevin,
Yes.
Manley? Yes. Anderson?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Palmacino?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion carries. Item 6, under Other A, announcements. Are there any announcements for the good of the whole?
I have one. K through 9 starts tomorrow, first day of school. It's an exciting time for all of us. And I see some parents over there clapping. And 10 through 12 will start on Wednesday. Thank you.
Other announcements? Amber?
Just to piggyback off of that, more of a celebratory, I rushed here, probably among other board members, from 2 open houses, and there was quite a buzz around the schools and lots of smiles and lots of welcomes. So it was really great energy, and yes, I too am excited to send my children back to school.
I would echo that, both from Wilder and Kelly today. It's in the air. Other announcements?
Dave?
Yes, Jay?
The high school principals, their presentation on attendance was great. I'd be really interested in kind of end of first semester feedback. Data, statistics, and kind of, hey, how's this working out?
Great. Thank you. We'll move that. We'll treat that as our transition into 6B, board request for future considerations. We'll make sure we'll have an update by the end of the first semester. While we're on 6B, I just want to reiterate an update on virtual school and some type of sequence or fairly regular updates on the building fund. We'll work that out in committee and then bring those here. I don't know if it necessarily needs to be a monthly basis, but quarterly or something. Other board requests for future consideration? Hearing none, we are on to 6C, school board meeting norms. Jeff, how did we do?
We did very well adhering to the school board meeting norms.
Thank you. With that, we are adjourned. A reminder that we'll move shortly into the Facilities Committee meeting of the whole, so just give us enough time to stop and start, and then we'll call that meeting to order 4 minutes, something like that, or less. Quick stretch break, and we'll hit stop and play, and just give me a chance to get reorganized here.